Go for it.
No country wants global warming. No country is in favor of people dying across the world and global warming happening and the ecosystem of the planet destabilizing. But in the international community, everyone wants to help, but no one is willing to trust each other. There's a division of interest between rich countries and poor countries. There's a division of interest between large countries and small countries. NGOs have a lot of experience in this environmental crisis because we've been at the situation firsthand, not limited by a national filter or a national bias. And this is not an issue of a series of countries, if they're rich or poor, versus other countries that are different. This is not a war of political leverage or power. This is a global matter, and this is a third world war. Make no mistake that this is a war because we're fighting for the very survival of the human race. During war times, countries impose rations on their domestic citizens as a way to limit and give more resources to the fight at hand. What we're proposing is for the UN to do is to take the initiative and organize a worldwide rationing of fossil fuels and economic measures that will not put this in a question of how do we help it or how do we solve this problem, how can we trust one of these people, but to get over the fact and realize that if we do nothing and we debate on whether or not the rich countries and the small countries cannot agree, that in the end we'll all be doing ourselves. This is a situation the human race has never faced before. This is a man-made natural disaster that will threaten us and will continue to threaten us until we realize that this is not a separate country matter. This is a matter that affects every country the same, whether now or later. It's a matter of global importance.
Okay. Questions? Australia?
So, seeing that, do you have any specific propositions to kind of get countries to work together?
Well, in terms of international unity, if countries are afraid of each other and do not trust each other, if the main interest is mistrust, then the United Nations needs to be given more executive power. And every nation needs to recognize this. And if the fact that a nation does not follow these new environmental procedures, they could even, in the very most extreme of cases, be risked being kicked out of the UN and be not recognized as a sovereign country.
Okay. Next question. No questions? South Africa?
How do you propose that this rationing of fuels would be imposed on countries such as the fuel exporters, the biggest fuel exporters, the biggest fuel importers? What body would be able to enforce this, and what could the United Nations and the international community do in order to enforce this rationing?
Well, as the most powerful countries on the UN, the main objective of the Security Council would be to foresee this and to not send blocking vetoes based on one country to forestall any measures. In terms of countries that depend on exporting fossil fuels and oil, those countries, of course, would be given not as many economic options for their countries. And so then it would be the United Nations' job to supply them with aid or reparations to help them. And the amount that these rations would affect each country would differ depending on the country's GDP, the amount they export, the amount they import. Because you can't ask a country like the United States or China with a terrible environmental track record to expect other countries like that are much poorer, as in small Latin American countries and West African countries, to contribute the same.
I think we have one more question. If anyone has one?